Today we're going to be quickly going through equivalent forms of fractions. This is a section that you should already have done. We're just going to briefly review how to convert between different kinds of fractions. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at converting decimal fractions to common fractions. When you convert decimal fractions to common fractions, you need to use the place value of the digits to help you convert the decimal fraction to a common fraction. And then once you've converted it to a common fraction, you need to simplify as far as possible if you can. Okay, let's have a look at a quick example. In this example over here, you've got the fraction 27.05, which you need to write as a common fraction. So let's quickly have a look at the place value of everything in this number that we've got over here. So if we put this into a place value table, then the 2 is going to be in the tens column. The 7 is going to be in the ones or the units column. Then we've got our decimal point over here. Then we've got a 0 in the tenths column and a 5 in the hundredths column. Okay, so the 2 is 2 tens, the 7 is 7 ones or 7 units, the 0 is 0 tenths, and the 5 is 5 hundredths. Okay, so now let's go and have a look at how we convert this to a common fraction or write it as a common fraction. Okay, so over here, the number that I've got is 27.05. Now there are two ways of doing this. I can either work with it as a mixed number, okay, because over here I've got the 27, which is on the left hand side of my decimal point, which means that I have got whole numbers that I'm working with. So when you have something like this where you've got whole numbers that you're working with, you're going to be working with possibly a mixed number. Okay, you can choose if you want to work with a mixed number or if you want to do it as an improper fraction. Okay, so I'm going to show you both. So first of all, if I do it as a mixed number, then everything that's on the left hand side of the comma is going to be whole numbers. So that's going to be 27, like that. Okay, then everything that's on the right hand side of the decimal point, so I've got the 0.5 is going to be my fraction. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to see, remember we looked at the place value. So over here the 0 is 0 tenths and the 5 is 5 hundredths. You need to look at the digit that is the furthest to the right and what position it is in. The 5 is in the hundredths position, so I'm going to be working with hundredths over here. So I'm going to write my fraction as something over 100, and then I'm going to write whatever I've got here after the comma as a number over 100. Okay, so I'm going to take this 0.5. Now the number 0.5 is the same as just 5, so I'm just going to write 5 over 100. I don't need to write that first 0 because it's not following something that is a non-zero digit. If there was a 0 that was in between non-zero digits, then I would have to write the 0. But if it is the first, or if there's nothing else in front of it, then I don't need to worry about writing it. Bearing in mind that I'm not working with the digits over here because I already did them over there. Okay, once you've written it like that, you then need to go and simplify it if possible. And now in this case, I can simplify that. So the 27 is going to stay as it is, but this 5 over 100 I can simplify. 5 goes into there once, 5 goes into there 20 times, and that leaves me with 1 over 20. So this is 27 and 1 over 20. Okay, so that is one way of doing it, to work with it as a mixed number because I've got a whole number over here in front of the decimal point. Okay. The next thing I can do is to work with it as an improper fraction. So this is the other option. So I've got 27,05. Okay, so instead of taking the 27 and writing it as a big whole number before my fraction, I'm going to incorporate the whole thing as an improper fraction. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did over here by looking at the last digit in my fraction, the last non-zero digit, and say what position is it in. So over here, the 5 is the last non-zero digit, is the one furthest to the right, and it is in the hundredths position. So I'm going to be working with something over 100. Okay, and then what I do is I just take the whole number exactly as you see it over there and ignore that decimal point, and I just write it over 100. So I've got 2705 without the comma. So that's 2705. Once I've done that, I can then go and simplify that in the same way that I did over here, but now it's for the whole fraction. Okay, so 5 goes into 2705 541 times. Now, when you're working with a big number like this is when it's actually easier to do it that way, because it's much easier to simplify 5 over 100 than 2,705 over 100. But it is possible. You can just divide by 5, okay? And then I divide this by 5, and it goes in 20 times. And that leaves me with 541 over 20. Okay, so that is converting a decimal fraction to a common fraction. Okay, now let's have a look at converting the other way around. Converting common fractions to decimal fractions. When we convert common fractions to decimal fractions, we need to change the fraction so that it has a power of 10 as the denominator. It needs to have 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 and so on. Okay, so we need to convert that fraction. We need to change it to an equivalent fraction that has a power of 10 as the denominator. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. In this example, we need to write the number or the fraction 21 over 20 as a decimal fraction. So let's see how we would do this one. So if I take the fraction 21 over 20, and I need to write this as a decimal fraction, the first thing I have to do is I need to change the 20 to a number that is either 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, etc. Okay? Now I obviously can't change this to 10 because then I have to divide by 2, and I can't divide the top by 2 because that's going to give me a decimal fraction or another fraction. Okay? It's not a multiple of 2. So I'm going to multiply by 5 to change this to 100 rather. So this is going to be something over 100. Multiplying by 5, that gives me 105 over 100. So now I have got something that I can work with. I've got 105 over 100. Now I'm going to go and convert this to a decimal fraction. Now, just like we did with this one over here, we're going to be using place value to help us with this. The 100 tells me where I'm going to start. Because it's over 100, I'm going to be starting with my last digit in the hundredths position. Okay, so this needs to be, the hundredths position is 2 places after the comma. So the 5, the last digit over here, needs to be in the hundredths position. So I'm going to have the 5 and the 0. Those 2 are going to be after the comma because they are, the hundredths position is 2 places after the comma. And then this 1 over here, which is still there, has to go on the other side of the comma because I still have to write it somewhere. Okay, so that gives me 1,05, which is the same as 21 over 20. Okay, so that's how you convert a number to a decimal fraction. Another way of doing this would have been to change this question or this fraction over here, 21 over 20, to a mixed number. Okay, so I could have changed this to a mixed number by saying how many times does 20 go into 21? It goes in once with a remainder of 1 over 20. So here I've got a mixed number where 1 is my whole number. So that's what's going to go in front of my comma. So it's going to be 1, comma, and then the 1 over 20, actually let me first change this to something over 100. Okay, so this changes to 5 over 100. So it's going to be 1, comma, and then the 5 is going to be in the hundredths position. So 0, 5. So that is another way of doing it as well. So you can work with it as an improper fraction and do it like that, or you can convert it first to a mixed number and then change it to a decimal fraction from there. Either way is fine. Okay, now let's go on to common fractions, decimal fractions, and percentages and see how they are related to each other. In order to convert between common fractions, decimal fractions, and percentages, you need to remember that a percentage is an amount out of 100. Okay, that's very important. You can't work with percentages if you don't understand that a percentage is always going to be an amount out of 100. Okay, so now in this example we're going to be doing, we have to write 75% as a common fraction and a decimal fraction. Okay, so let's have a look at how we would do this question. So to convert 75% to a common fraction, first of all, remember 75%, a percentage is an amount out of 100. So if we write it as a fraction, we're going to be writing it as something out of 100. So it's going to be 75 out of 100. So it's going to be 75 over 100. That is how we write it as a common fraction. Then once we've done that, we then need to go and simplify it. So to simplify it, I'm going to divide by 25 at the top, goes in there 3 times, and 25 goes in the bottom 4 times. That gives me 3/4. So 75% is the same as 3/4. So that's converting it to a common fraction. Okay, now to convert it to a decimal fraction, what we're going to do is we are going to divide by 100. Just like over here, we divided by 100, but we wrote it as something over 100 because we wanted to write it as a common fraction, which is in this format of something over something else. But over here, I'm going to be writing it as a decimal fraction. So I don't want to write it as something over something else. So I'm going to rather just say 75 divided by 100. And when I divide by 100, what happens is the decimal point or the decimal comma is going to seem to move in this direction. So when I move it, or when I divide by 100, the comma, which at the moment is over here, is going to move 2 places, making the number get smaller. So it's going to end up over there, and then I'm going to fill in a 0 in front of that comma. So this is going to be 0,75. Now this you could also have converted over there from your common fraction to a decimal fraction like that. Or if you've already converted it to a decimal fraction, you can convert to the common fraction from the decimal fraction as well. Sometimes it's easier, depending on what the percentage is, it's easier to first find the decimal fraction and then convert to a common fraction, because that conversion is sometimes easier than working with a conversion straight from the percentage to the common fraction. Okay, so that's converting between percentages, common fractions, and decimal fractions. Right, now let's go and have a look at an example where we're going to be applying all of these things. So in this activity, you need to take each of these values that you've been given. So you've been given over here a percentage, here you've been given a common fraction, here you've been given a decimal fraction, and so on. You need to convert and find the other values, or the equivalent forms of those values. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 minutes to work on this activity. Okay, so let's go through all of those and see what you should have got. So first of all, the first one you had was 92%. Okay, so when you're given it the percentage form, like I said, it's sometimes easier to convert first to the decimal fraction and then to the common fraction. So that's the order that I'm going to do when we get the percentage form. So the 92%, to convert it to a decimal fraction, we're going to divide by 100. Okay, so if I divide by 100, the comma is going to move from over here 2 places. So I'm going to end up with 0.92. So your decimal should be 0.92. Then the common fraction, when we convert this to a common fraction, we're going to take this and see what is the place value of the last digit. That's the hundredths position. So I'm going to have something over 100. So it's over 100, and this is going to be 92 over 100. Now, 92 over 100 I can simplify, and that gives you 23 over 25. If you divide by 4 at the top and at the bottom, you get 23 over 25. So for the common fraction, you should have got 23 over 25. Right, let's go on to the next one. You were given 29 over 200. Okay, so when you're given a common fraction, it's easiest to change first to the decimal fraction, just like it was when we were given the percentage. It was easier to change it first to the decimal fraction. The same thing when you're given the common fraction. Change it first to a decimal fraction by changing the denominator to a power of 10. So if the denominator is 200, I'm going to multiply that by 5 to get 1000. Okay, so I'm going to times the top by 5 as well, and that's going to give me 145. So 29 over 200 is the same as 145 over 1000. Now I'm going to convert that to a decimal fraction. So as a decimal fraction, the thousandths position, which is 3 places after the comma, is going to be my 5. Okay, so I'm going to have 3 places. That's 1, 2, 3. So all 3 of these digits are going to be in those places after the comma. So I've got a 0 in front of the comma, and then the 1, 4, and 5. So that's what you should get for your decimal fraction. So your decimal fraction is 0.145. Then to convert this to a percentage, we're going to do the opposite of what we did when we were converting from a percentage to a decimal fraction. We're going to multiply by 100. So the comma is going to move the other way. So I'm going to go 1, 2 places that way. So I'm going to end up with 14.5%. Okay, so that over here is 14.5%. So that's what you should have got for 29 over 100. Okay, the next one that you had was a decimal fraction, 0.73. So when you're given a decimal fraction, you can convert the decimal fraction to a common fraction by saying what place value is the last digit. The last digit is the 3, and it is in the hundredths position. So that's going to be 73 over 100. Okay, so 0.73, let me just move this down for you quickly. So 0.73 is the same as 73 over 100. Now this can't be simplified, okay? So our common fraction is 73 over 100, and then our percentage, I'm going to take my decimal fraction, I'm going to multiply that by 100. So 1, 2 places, the comma is going to move in this direction, giving me 73%, which you could also have seen easily over here. If your fraction is something over 100, it means that the top number is your percentage. So it's 73%. So for this one, you should have got 73% over there. Okay, so those are the first 3. Now let's go on to the next one. We've got 6.5%. Okay, so when you've been given the percentage, let me just move this up again. It'll work over here. So here I've got 6.5%. Okay, so when we've got the percentage, remember, it's easier to convert to the decimal fraction first. So I'm going to say 6.5% is the same as, if I move this 1, 2 places to the left, because I am dividing by 100, it's going to be 0.065 as my decimal fraction. So my decimal fraction is 0.065. And then writing that as a common fraction, I'm going to see, well, this is in the thousandths position. There are 3 decimal places to the thousandths position. So this is going to be something over 1,000. And the number at the top, I've got 0065. So it's just going to be 65. over 1,000. Now this I can simplify. 5 goes into both of those, and that leaves me with 13 over 200. So that's what you should have got for your common fraction for the 6.5%. Okay, 13 over 200. Now let's have a look at the next one. We were given 167 over 200. Okay, so 167 over 200. First, I'm going to work out my decimal fraction. To convert this to something over 1,000, I'm going to multiply by 5, just like I did for this one. Okay, now it's not always going to be something over 200, but in this case it happens to be for both of these. So now I'm going to convert that by multiplying by 5. That gives me something over 1,000. And that is going to be 835. Okay, so once you've got your fraction over 1,000, you're then going to convert that to your decimal fraction by putting the things in the correct places, and the correct place is going to be in the thousandths position. We're going to have the 5. So that's 3 decimal places or 3 positions after the comma. So all 3 of these are going to be after the comma because there are 3 digits. So I've got 0, comma, and then 835. So the 5 is in the thousandths position. Okay, so that's our decimal fraction. And then to convert to a percentage, we're going to take the decimal fraction and we're going to multiply by 100, which moves that decimal point 2 places to the right, giving us 83.5%. So that's what you should have got for your percentage for that one. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. We had a decimal fraction 0.54. Okay, so if your decimal fraction is 0.54, then we can convert this to a common fraction by putting it over 100. So it's going to be 54 over 100. We're doing it over 100 because the 4 is in the hundredths position. And now I can go and simplify that. If I simplify that, it gives you 27 over 50, which you can't simplify any further. So over here, our common fraction is 27 over 50. And then converting that to a percentage, I'm going to take I can take this or that and write that as a percentage by multiplying by 100. That gives me 54%. Or I can look at it over here where it is over 100 and I can say it's 54%. Okay, so for that one you should have got 54% for your percentage. Okay, and then the last one we had 350%. Okay, so for this last one, let me just move this over here for you quickly. So for this last one over here, where we have 350%, sorry, that's 350. Okay, what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to convert this to a decimal fraction. Remember, it's generally easier to convert to a decimal from a percentage and then convert to the common fraction. Okay, so to convert this to a decimal fraction, I'm going to divide by 100. So my comma is going to move from here 1, 2 places. So it's going to be 3, 5, and then 0, but I don't need to write that 0 because there's nothing else after it. So 3, 5. So your decimal fraction for this one should be 3, 5. And then we're going to convert this to a common fraction. Now 3, 5, when we convert that to a common fraction, you have 2 choices. You can either work with it as a mixed number because you've got the 3, which is a whole number, so that gives you 3 and 5 over 10. Okay, because that's in the tenths position. And that simplifies to 3.5. So over here, I can write that as 3.5. I would normally write it at the bottom, I just don't have space, okay? Or you could also take that 3, 5, and you can write it as 35 over 10 by saying the 10th position, the 5 is in the 10th position, so I'm going to have something over 10, and I just write the whole thing over 10. So it's going to be 35 over 10, and then I can simplify that by dividing both of those by 5, and that gives me 7 over 2. And 7 over 2 and 3.5 are the same as each other. So over here you could have had 7 over 2 if you worked with it as an improper fraction, or you could have 3.5 if you worked with it as a mixed number like that. And that is how we convert between equivalent forms of fractions. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.